Wasn't that fantastic, everybody? Now, before we welcome Josh Patrick, our next speaker, onto the stage, I just want to give everybody an opportunity to stand up and shake their arms and legs and wiggle their head around a little bit and get some blood flow, okay? That was all really awesome and great. We all fought really hard, I think, then. So, okay, shake your arms around a little bit above your head like this. Shake the leg. Shake the other leg. Give your tushy a wiggle. We love a tushy wiggle. Now, where's everyone going? I know. Okay, everybody else sit down. In your seats. I think some people have just had a bit of a toilet break. Yeah, right. So we're going to get started, and those people can make their way back in after their little break. Nice, got a bit of water. Okay. So, our next speaker. Where is he? Where are you, Josh? There you are. Amazing. So Josh is incredible, all right? I want you to all bring your mindfulness practices to bear here because we're going to want to pay a lot of attention to what Josh is saying. Josh is a 16-year-old ATAR student who supports and advocates for disadvantaged youth. He was a TEDx youth speaker at just 14 years old. He is a member of the Australian Youth Affairs Coalition, a National Swan Sibling Ambassador, a maths tutor, a Carers Australia Media Ambassador, and a devoted carer to his sister, who is here to watch him today, isn't she? Yes. Yeah, fantastic. So as a youth advocate and motivational speaker, he's using his experience of adversity to enact change. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the amazing Josh Patrick.
Okay, well I was talked up a lot then. But good afternoon everyone, my name is Joshua Patrick. It's my pleasure to speak here today. Right now I'm attending Northam Senior High School in Northam and I'm year 11 as you heard. But really the reason I'm presenting here today for all of you is because of my experience with disadvantage. And I'd like to say how I've survived through that disadvantage and thrived thanks to the help of my school. Where's the clicking thing?
Not the clicky thing.
Not the
Okay.
Oh. Have you got reverse?
Okay, there we go. I understand it's a bit unconventional to start off with a quote, but this quote really stands out to me because it's actually at the base of the signature line of one of my teachers, Adrienne Waters. And she demonstrates the concept of this quote every day. She started up the Gifted and Talented Education class in my school, and every day she supports students through that to really look for their own passions and strive for a career in their own passions through projects on things that pique their interests. Just to give a bit of context, I grew up in Mandangala community, somewhere ridiculously remote, and attended Jundranung Remote Community School. There we were often reined in for weeks at a time, with my family having to live on what stuff we bought for the last week and kind of stretch that out to make sure we can survive. Also in this community, strangely enough, I was a minority. Despite being a white male, this community was actually run by Indigenous people. And it's because of that I actually learnt about their culture, learnt about how they lived, to such an extent that when my family tried to take me to Perth for once, I refused to wear shoes or a shirt on the plane. But yeah, the school there really consisted of just 2 classrooms. I think it was a year 3 class and year 3 to year 4 to year 7 class. So it's an absolutely tiny school, and I've spent many of my early years there, resulting in somewhat of a poor education. You kind of already seen this for technical issues. But trigger warning, if there is anyone here who has been through a medically traumatic situation, feel free to leave now. No? Okay. At 6 years of age, my mum was pregnant with her 3rd child, and about halfway through the pregnancy, the scan identified my sister, Charlotte, as having an undiagnosed syndrome and a diaphragmatic hernia. This, for most people, means a small hole in the diaphragm and a bit of the stomach poking through. In Charlotte's case, it actually meant that her entire left diaphragm was missing and all of her abdominal organs migrated up into her left chest, preventing her left lung from growing. As a result of 3 days of life, Charlotte had to have a surgery to move all of these abdominal organs in her left chest back down into her abdomen and replace her diaphragm with pigskin, of all things. That's a lot slower than I remember. A few months later, and many diagnoses later, she's been diagnosed with a seizure disorder, gut dysmotility, cerebral palsy, autism, and a multitude of other conditions as well. She's still alive, thank goodness, but we've realised that we had to make many changes to deal with the heavy caring role that Charlotte's placed on our family. As a result, my mum was no longer able to work as a principal in Northam, where we were living at the time, meaning that we were living on a single income of a teacher. This placed us below the poverty line, putting us in financial struggle, and eventually leading to the man of the house suffering from mental health issues. As a result of these mental health issues, he somewhat took to self-medication away in the form of drugs and alcohol, leading to irrational thoughts, irrational anger, and eventually leading to violence and a family domestic violence situation. Fortunately, however, the perpetrator has since left and are now living on a single income of a carer's pension now, putting us way below the poverty line and making us suffer from financial struggles even more. Now, I used a few terms which you may or may not be familiar with. I'm sure you all have an understanding of what disadvantage is to an extent, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a definition of what I was going to be using disadvantage as throughout this presentation. So for me, disadvantage is an unfavourable circumstance or condition that reduces the chances of success or effectiveness. Apparently it's also for Oxford English Dictionary as well. Yeah. Another another term you may be a little less familiar with is the concept of intersectionality. Now, that is really how these disadvantages can overlap. For instance, in my story, as a result of my poverty, that could lead to mental health issues, drug and alcohol use, and family domestic violence situation. So yes, the ways in which different aspects of a person's identity can expose them to overlapping forms of discrimination and marginalisation. Now, this is by no means a definitive list of the factors of disadvantage. This was just a few that kind of came off the top of my head. So as you can see, we have being First Nations, being culturally diverse, having a minority religion. Gender can be a factor of disadvantage. There can be ethnic minorities, sexual orientation, and outliers of physical attributes. These ones that are still up on the screen are the ones that either I or my family have experienced and had an impact on my education. So as you can see, there's disability, chronic health conditions, drug and alcohol abuse, regional locations, mental health issues, poverty, family domestic violence, and a home caring role. Now, this is a flowchart, as you can see. And this, I really just wanted to highlight how everything can be connected. While I haven't experienced all of these links personally, these are very present and possible in society and can be seen on the news. But for instance, my story started off with health and disability being intertwined and connected. That led to a caring role in my family. The caring role meant that my mother was no longer able to work, putting us in poverty. That poverty placed financial strain. That poverty put strain on our family, making us emotionally struggling, causing mental health issues. The mental health issues, to cope with those, the man of the house turned to drugs and alcohol, and finally that led to a family domestic violence situation. Now this, I was thinking about getting rid of this slide actually, but really all I wanted to highlight here was how there can be overlapping aspects and impacts on students suffering from multiple different types of disadvantage. For instance, living in regional WAs, people can have smaller schools and non-divided year levels, as we saw in the far up north WA. But much like caring, it can also have extensive home responsibilities due to living on a farm or looking after someone like my sister. Now, next few slides, I'm actually going to be talking about my school and career, because I'm year 11, I'm still in school. And I really just wanted to contrast two experiences that I've had. And this quote here perfectly summarizes what I'm about to say. It's the teacher that makes the difference, not the classroom. Here, I was at my first school. I'm not going to mention any names. But as you can see, I'm very, very tense, very rigid, and faking the smile the best I can. And this is how I felt most mornings before school. Most mornings I felt physically sick to such an extent that my mum actually tried me on different milks, almond milk, soy milk, because I was having cereal every morning and they thought it was that. But this school had the best facilities. It had everything that you needed, and it was far better than the alternatives in terms of how much they get paid to teach their students. But it doesn't matter, because I was sitting on a 68% attendance at the time, and I was failing most of my classes. I was an unsuccessful student, and I felt that way pretty much every morning, hence why I didn't want to go to school. But this all changed one day when I went to my second school, Northam Senior High School. I will be naming names here. Here, the person sitting to my right is actually no one to do with the school itself. It's a local politician, Mia Davies, the Honourable Mia Davies MLA. And the reason I put in this photo is really because the teachers, they organised for Mia Davies to come to the school to look at the facilities, but also made sure that there was enough time for Mia Davies to talk to me because of my passion and ideal career in politics in the future. They made sure that this opportunity was open to me to make sure that I could get my name out there and possibly have a career in politics. When I was at this school, my dietary requirements disappeared somehow. And I was feeling much better every morning actually. Despite sitting on 68% attendance for the majority of my schooling, I was either in the top 10 or ducks most years. And this year, getting ATAR marks to get me up to a 96 ATAR. So yeah, like I said, it's the teacher, not the classroom. Also, throughout my time at Northam Senior High School, they've supported me to attend multiple presentations like this one today. For instance, I was at a TEDx talk, and this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for my school and them actually proposing this idea to me. Another thing, this was actually the WA Premier's Anzac Tour of 2023. And once again, this wouldn't be possible without the school, especially one teacher in particular named
Melanie Pillane. Melanie Pillane.
Melanie Pillane. Thank you, Mum. Wow, that really takes away from the message, doesn't it? But yeah, no, she's an absolutely amazing teacher, and we've drifted apart over the past year or so, hence why I forgot her name. But back then, we knew each other quite well, and as a result, she proposed this idea of the WA Premier's Anzac Tour, and she didn't just propose it, but she also supported me through the application process. Despite it not being a part of the school curriculum and actually attending the school, she made sure I dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's in the application, went through, edited it multiple times, making sure that it was absolutely perfect so I had the best chances to get into this tour. A few other things that I've done, presenting to teachers also. I presented at the WAXO conference, once again talking about disadvantage and how teachers can really support their students with disadvantage, as well as an engagement forum where I presented a similar message. And I would not have the success story that I have today if it wasn't for my teachers and my school that I am privileged to attend. Oh yeah, this one. This one I am actually at a Purposeful event, and Purposeful is an organisation that talks to students about alternative career pathways. You can see myself there with my purple hair phase presenting to students and student leaders about how they can better improve their schools and how they can support their peers and possibly communicate with their teachers to best create their career opportunities. If I got the right email, this room should be mostly filled with vocational education teachers. So I thought I'd share a few of the vocational education experiences that I've had through Northam Senior High School. First, you can see on the left is Telethon Kids Institute, and that's an institute that works to diagnose children like my sister, because she actually has an undiagnosed syndrome. Despite having that cerebral palsy, autism, dysmotility, there actually is no genetic cause for what Charlotte has, meaning there's no way that any of our family knows whether we can pass it on. So as a result, Charlotte was the gift of giving child for the Telethon Ball when they were fundraising money to support the institute, and through that I was actually on a video played in front of a bunch of rich people to donate some money. And it was through that I got connected with the Telethon Kids Institute and started talking with them until eventually I was actually able to work with one of the leading minds there, named Timo Lassman, working on programming to actually, well, refining the programming to diagnose children like my sister. Another thing, very different to the last thing, I actually was going through an aeronautical engineering phase, I think. And as a result, despite it being very different from my last aspirations, the school still allowed me to miss out on even more school so I could go attend the Northern Airfield and work with aeroplanes. Third thing, Minderoo Foundation. That, I actually went to a Minderoo photo shoot. Yes, Minderoo photo shoot, I'm getting there. Yeah, Minderoo photo shoot, and there we were actually supporting the funding for a hospice. As much as it is a negative thought, if Charlotte or anyone like her needs end-of-life care. It was through that I actually gained many connections with the Minderoo Foundation and was able to participate in a Minderoo work experience opportunity to talk on how to communicate with youth suffering from disadvantage and more specifically a caring role like myself. And finally, there's this amazing thing that the school does, is they actually are working with the local TAFE to do an online TAFE course instead of an ATAR subject. And because it's online, and because they allowed me to do this at my own pace, whereas most people I'm aware of outside of school had to do it at a rigid, set pace, I was able to do the 2-year nursing course just in one term this year. So I just talked about my 2 experiences and what they looked like, how they felt. Didn't really go into smell, sound, and touch, but I just wanted to really go over what made Northam Senior High School such a positive school to attend. Firstly, they have really approachable admin, and they really believe in that open door policy. Whenever I go to the deputy principal, which is my first port of call for anything out of the blue, after just sitting outside for a few minutes, I can actually walk into his office whenever I want, and he centers himself, he practices that mindfulness, and then he listens to what I have to say, despite it sometimes being ridiculously out there. Whereas most schools, it's this 2-week waiting process after you set up an appointment, and even then it's either formal, just with you and him, or you, him, and sometimes even a parent, depending on how big the query is. Teachers' passion for students' interest. This is a massive one. Like I said, Adrienne Waters, one of the teachers at my school, she supports us to do what we want and our interests, even though it may not be as fitting into the curriculum as other subjects like English and math. Like I said, it's really important to have that passion for students' interests and know where they want to go, because you can teach a subject, But if you don't see how that subject can be applicable to them, they probably don't either. And they probably don't want to pay attention to that subject because they don't think it'll get them anywhere. Flexibility. Like I said, I was sitting on 68% attendance, and I did get top 10, but that did come at a cost. A cost that I was quite happy to pay. But Northern Senior High School runs the Big Picture program, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. But it's this program that really works towards students deciding where they want to go, working outside of school to meet certain pillars to get the equivalent of an ATAR score. I did something a bit alternative, and I did a part-time Big Picture program where I sacrificed all the non-mesh subjects of maths, English, science, and HASS for these Big Picture classes. And any time I spent out of school, the half the year that I spent out of school, I actually worked in these Big Picture classes to catch up on any maths, English, science, and HASS work that I did at the sacrifice of those subjects that I know I'll never use for like woodwork, metalwork, digital technologies. Celebrating students' achievements. The TEDx thing is a real good, gives a real good idea of what this means. Many of the teachers from my school attended the TEDx event, not because they were trying to get connections with TEDx or because they were, well, I'm sure they were interested in the other speakers, but not because of that. They actually came to celebrate my achievements and how far I'd come from the first day that I arrived at Northern Senior High School, failing, not doing well in classes at all. Genuine relationships. I don't really have a single example for this one because it's actually just a school culture and knowing your teachers. But yeah, it's really important to have those genuine relationships because myself and other students, we know when people are faking. As much as you think you're the most amazing faker out there, if you don't actually have a genuine joy and drive to be there, they can definitely pick up on it. Going the extra mile. Adrienne Waters, the gifted and talented education teacher, she supported me to do something outside of school. She allowed me the funding to go and get a furnace to work on sustainable technologies with recycled products, recycled aluminium. As a result, with this furnace, I was able to melt down aluminium cans, aluminium jewellery, everything I needed to create this wind turbine outside of school. But it's not just allowing me to do that. She actually went home, scrounged for every bit of aluminium she had in her house, came over to my house, dropped this all off to allow me to actually complete this in time before the project was over because she knew I wouldn't have the time otherwise. Commitment to connect and understand circumstances of students' own lives. I'm sure in every one of your classes there is the bad kid. Put your hand up. Do you have a bad kid in your class? Yeah, I'm sure most of you do. But have you ever thought about what their morning looked like? What the night before looked like? If they were actually safe in their homes? If they were struggling to get their homework done, not because they didn't have enough, or because they did not have enough time, but because they had a caring role, they had to look after someone. They didn't actually have enough time. As long as we have that commitment to understand what they're going through, then we can teach them with this lens of, okay, maybe you can't do the homework. Maybe we should allow you time in class with the homework. And disciplining a child, that, as we know, leads to maths anxiety and other anxiety, causing them to struggle even more with their schoolwork. Modified expectations and courses of action. I did not once get a person knocking on my door checking to see if my attendance was okay. Whereas on 68, most people would get an officer, go up to their door, knock, 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 why are you attending school? But it's because I actually explained to the school what my circumstances were like and how I was living, that they knew not to do that because they knew that despite me struggling in terms of attendance, I still had the capability to succeed. And it's actually not my fault that I'm not attending school. And finally, trust capable students to have ownership of their education. Once again, I may not be attending school as much as the other students, but as long as I'm succeeding and as long as I'm driven, even if I'm not succeeding, and I'm driven, and I'm making sure I can actually work hard to succeed in the future, trust the students to have an ownership of their education and ownership of their future career. And coincidentally, it's out of these things that Northern Senior High School has done, they've actually supported me to develop these skills, as well as like accountability, autonomy, self-motivation, making sure I can get that 2-year course done in 1 term, despite me not going to school for half of it. Having initiative, working towards things yourself because you know that you can't actually attend school where most people are. And optimism about the future. Actually having those genuine relationships and people you can communicate with and trust, that can really give you a sense of optimism. So, I told you about the differences between my previous school and this school and what makes the latter so much greater. But I just want to ask you, how do teachers and schools facilitate a culture that is inclusive and accessible for students experiencing disadvantage? Maybe you can tell me at the end, because I think it's going to be very difficult to do it now. But think about that and get back to me when I finish my presentation. I've thought about 6 of these ideas about how to better improve the education system and how to better support people suffering experiencing disadvantage. Firstly, we really need to recognise and celebrate this difference. Just because a person is experiencing a caring role or a person is experiencing poverty and may not be able to attend every day, firstly, we need to recognise this because once again, we cannot teach our students to the best extent unless we actually know what's going on. But in many schools, once we identify this child as the poor kid, he is furthermore the poor kid. And once we actually pick up on this, once we understand what they're going through, many schools just strive to separate them from the rest of the class so they can get the best education. But really, most students, with the anxiety that they face from being separated, it causes them to suffer anyway. So what we need to do is when we identify these students, don't separate them from the class, don't deal with the many, with the disadvantaged, but just deal with everyone, maybe making a quiet note to bring the other people up to the same level as the other students, not separating them into a lower class because of their disadvantage. Adopt a strengths-based philosophy, avoiding bias and maintaining high expectations. Now, I don't really have an example for this one, well, I do, but it's not a teacher example. Someone who's very close to me started attending Northern Senior High School, but prior to attending, she's been told about all the horror stories, all the bad kids, all the fights, all the dramas, which are largely exaggerated. And she came to this school somewhat seeking these bad things, these fights, and she actually got involved with all of these dramas that were happening at Northern Senior High School. A similar thing can happen with teachers. If you go into a class or a school and let's say someone tells you prior, that's the bad school, you're going to have to deal with all the bad kids. You're going to immediately go into that class jumping on any behaviour whatsoever. Whereas it may be minor and it may be by accident that they do this. I just try to avoid these preconceived notions that you get prior to entering a classroom and just learn from the students themselves and understand where they're at. Like I said, we shouldn't label our students. Once you label someone, you put them in a box. They can't get out, they cannot escape from that box. As soon as someone's been diagnosed with a learning disability, they don't have any hope for their future. And I'm sure most of you wouldn't have any hope for their future either because of their learning disability. But if we put that label aside and trust the student, for instance, I have dyslexia, but I'm sitting on 96%, and it's because of the support that I've been provided on a 68% attendance that I've been able to get to that. And not because I've been labelled with dyslexia, but because they understand me as a person. See life from the perspective of disadvantaged pupils. Let's not try and middle class-size them. Quite often, many people from a poor home life may not have the same values and the same goals as the middle class community, and that's okay. In the end, what we're trying to achieve here is get them a career that will make them happy. If making them successful doesn't necessarily make them happy, don't try and lead them to that. That's not what their goal is. They want to survive, and they'll be happy doing it. I bring this one up again because it's ridiculously important. We need to have those genuine relationships with, and interactions with students. Them knowing that they can rely on you, and knowing that they actually can trust you with how they feel and what they sorry, I had another mind blank. With how they feel and how they're going, really makes them able to trust you and knows that you'll support them through their education journey. And finally, let's not all try and make children succeed on our own. It's not a one-teacher job. As I've heard multiple times, it takes a village to raise a child. And that is very true in our schools. Don't try and support them in solace, but rather actually support them with your... Is peers the right word for teachers? Yeah. Yeah,
Colleagues.
So support them with your peers. Know that you can rely on them to really support your students and the people that you're looking after. Maybe if you don't know a topic as well as someone else, don't think that they won't support you, because you both have the same goal. You both want to bring them up to be successful people. Make sure you go to your other teachers and have them support you and your classes. Once again, another trigger warning. Had a very eventful life. If anyone has had a house fire or any kind of fire, if your toast is burnt, please feel free to leave the room. You have been warned. On somewhere in June.
July.
July, my mum tells me. I'm sorry, I have a horrible memory for dates. Our family had a house fire. And it was 3 o'clock in the morning, we were all asleep, and we literally had to run out of the house to get out of this house fire, with some of my family barely surviving and falling to the floor because of the smoke inhalation. And it was, when we ran out of this fire, my sister's room was the furthest from where the actual fire was happening, and with about 3 doors in between us and the fire, you couldn't really tell that there was a fire in the house when you were in my sister's room. As a result, we got all of our clothing that we could from my sister's room, meaning I was wearing a unicorn hoodie for the rest of the day. After sitting in a cold car from 3 o'clock till 7, I think we came to the conclusion that I wasn't able to attend school that day. But by the end of the day, the school actually supported our family and really passed the hat around. They made sure that the hospitality students weren't able to eat their own cooking, but rather donated that to us. They made sure that we actually had meals for the following days by using resources that they already had to support those in disadvantage. They made sure, all of the teachers made sure they gave in something or some piece of clothing that they didn't fit anymore, and made sure that they could donate it to a family in need so they could better get through their education. The principal gave away free clothing just to make sure that we could go to school for the next couple of days. It was really another one of those situations where the village, the community of the school, was able to support a family through their trying times and make them able to succeed in everything that they do. There are a few other photos. Here, as you can see, I have 3 sisters. Charlotte's not the only one. The one on the left is my eldest sister, Bella. And this was her 12th birthday. This was how she was spending her 12th birthday. 3 days after the fire, the chiprock, the soaked chiprock, because obviously they had to put out the fire with a hose, had fallen onto the wooden floor. And water and wood does not go well together. Trying to scavenge what we could from the house, we had to shovel all this absolutely drenched chiprock out of a dirty house with clothing that we only just got a few days ago. It may not fit us as well as we want to. So I just want to leave you on this. When the untapped potential of a student meets the liberating art of a teacher, a miracle unfolds. And if we can all be those teachers, we can make miracles in all of our schools every day. Thank you. I'm not sure how much time we have. Do we have?
Yeah, if you want to do it. Does anyone have any questions for Josh? Anyone? Wave your hand in the air if you've got a question. All right. Oh, yeah.
Yes.